Business Solutions Hub, which turned out to be very, very popular, really very, very popular. And that then informed our decision to, like 3-4 weeks later, which is where we are now, to repeat that session. For those of you who are online today, but may not have had an opportunity to log on at the summit and have access to this critical information that we have a responsibility to then share with you. Thank you so much for indulging me as I gave you an overview of why we are doing this and why we think it is important for you as entrepreneurs and SMEs to have access to this information that is meant to assist you to run your businesses. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to welcome onto the platform our very first speaker, who will take us through their program as the South African Bureau of Standards, SABS, Mr. Dumisani Mgadi, who is online with us. Mr. Mgadi, thank you so much for joining us. May I please request that you switch on your camera. Dumisani Mgadi is the Manager for Business Development from the SABS, and he's here to take you through a presentation of how you can benefit as a business from the programs that SABS have. Mr. Mgadi, welcome, a warm welcome to you, and you're very, the mic is yours, for a lack of a better word. We're looking forward to hearing from you. Thank you, sir. I think you are on mute still. Please.
Sorry.
There we go.
Thank you very much for that warm welcome. Some of us shy away from videos and all that maybe. So once again, I just want to say thank you to Proudly SA. One would really state that Proudly SA has a symbiotic type of a relationship with SABS. And Proudly SA focuses on buying local, whereas SABS enforces local content verification. So that forms part of those similarities that you find between the two entities. And yes, indeed, we would like to promote local commodities, local products. And it is pretty much good when you see SMMEs are producing products locally. I'm just going to switch off my video so that I can start. But nonetheless, it is pretty much good when we see SMMEs coming to the fore and producing products locally, products that can be consumed by the local markets. And there is a dire need for such commodities. Sis Happy, one would really say, when it comes to us as South Africans, we are pretty much fortunate to have a whole lot of commodities. We have got a whole lot of raw materials. But what pains me many a times is the fact that in as much as we have all these raw materials, but when it comes to beneficiating those raw materials, we truly are failing in that particular space. And it would be nice to see SMMEs that would take beneficiation very seriously and begin to produce products locally. And I'm pretty much glad to tell you that there is a SMME in the Mpumalanga area who has started producing petrol and diesel and other oils using waste material. And pretty much soon we will be working with that very SMME to make sure that they comply with all the relevant statutory and regulatory requirements. Before you can comply with SABS South African national standards, you need to comply with the statutory and the regulatory requirements. Thank you very much for that. It was just purely an introduction. Thank you to the SMMEs who are within our midst. We welcome you and we wish you well in your business, especially in these trying times. I will really run through my slides. I won't get into all the slides purely because of time constraints. Now, when we talk about the SABS, we talk about an entity that was formed in 1945 under the Standards Act of 1945. It was also immediately after the World War II, when there was a need for standardization globally. And one would also mention that it was after the World War II when we started experiencing the industrial boom. And because of the industrial boom, companies started looking elsewhere to get certain commodities. But for them to have that assurance that they will be procuring the right commodities, they will be procuring the right spares, they needed to make sure that there are standards that are going to govern the production of those particular products. Then SABS was formed, and other standards organizations globally were formed. But they were all driven around the ISO organization, which is the International Standards Organization based in Geneva. It's still standing even today. And all the standards organization, they report directly to the International Standards Organization, where they congregate together and talk about the generation of new standards, the introduction of new standards, and so forth. But again, SABS, after 2008, then changed into the Standards Act of 2008. And the reason it's purely with the separation of NRCS as well as SABS. I will talk just a little about NRCS in my next slides and the role of NRCS, which is the regulator. But before I get into our core, our objectives as an organization, let me make a disclaimer to SMMEs. Certification is not compulsory. It is voluntary. Many companies out there, they use SABS as a gatekeeper. They would say to entities, for us to buy your product, you must be SABS approved. Hence, I'm saying, our services are voluntary. They are not mandatory. So we need to keep that in mind. Now, what are our objectives as an organization? We develop and we promote and maintain South African national standards, which are loosely known as SANS. We promote quality with respect to commodities, products, and services. We render conformity assessment services and matters that are connected therewith. When you talk about conformity assessment, you talk about testing as part of conformity assessment. You talk about local content verification as part of conformity assessment. You talk about consignment inspection. You talk about system certification as well as product certification. They form part of conformity assessment. Now, I spoke about NRCS, that we had to sever our ties with NRCS in 2008. And now, when you talk about NRCS, NRCS has got its own legislative mandate, different from that one of SABS. NRCS is mandated to regulate the adherence to compulsory specifications and technical regulations in South Africa. There are products that are regulated by law. Your electronic products, they are regulated by law. Some of in fact, your disinfectants, they are regulated by law. And that is the duty of NRCS, to make sure that those who produce these particular commodities are within the frameworks of the regulations that have been set. Now, when you see people complaining about SABS, where was SABS when we were fed donkey meat? Where was SABS when we were sold junk cars? Or even junk TVs and so forth? It's purely because people don't have an understanding that it is not the role of SABS to oversee and to regulate such commodities. It is the role of NRCS. Hence, I had to put this slide so that you can have an understanding that there is a regulator who's mandated to regulate the incoming and outgoing of certain goods. Hence, when you buy electric products, when you buy light bulbs and so forth overseas, before they get into our country, you need to have the letter of authority from the regulator, which is NRCS. SABS reports directly to DTI or to DTIC. Not only SABS, even NRCS, who is the regulator, SANAS, which is the regulating, which is the accreditation body, as well as NEMISA, which is the trade metrology entity. They all report directly to DTIC. Now, this is our footprint. I'm not going to get deeper into our footprint. Now, this forms part of our value chain as an entity. We have standards developing entity within SABS, which falls under SABS. SABS is subdivided into two. You've got SABS, and then you've got SABS commercial. And under SABS, you've got standards. And within standards, you've got committees, you've got entities, you've got departments that formulate and they produce standards. And this is where we want SMMEs to participate in the formulation of standards. SMMEs must participate in these particular committees purely because we've got more than 4,000 committee members. We've got more than 400 committees. These are the committees that sit every month to formulate standards, to review the existing standards, to change the existing standards, to introduce new standards. Then we've got the training academy within SABS that provides training on standards, that provides technical support to SMMEs and entrepreneurs on standardization services. We've got the advisory services. Advisory services is purely earmarked for SMMEs. That's where we assist SMMEs to comply with the relevant standards. And within the advisory services, these two, training and advisory services, they work in tandem. We have introduced a new product which we call work integrated learning. With work integrated learning, rather than us teaching you how to, implementing the system on your behalf, with work integrated learning, we assist you, we train you on how to develop quality management systems. And you go all out there and you develop. Every now and then you come back, you say, look at what I have done. Have I implemented my processes, or have I developed my processes in accordance to standards? Then they check and they verify whether you are on par or you are not. And they give you another training. You go in, you develop the quality management system. Once you've developed your quality management system, you are free to go. But what makes the work integrated learning more critical is purely because you as an entity implement, or rather develop and implement your own quality management systems, which gives you the level of ownership, unlike somebody assisting you. Then we've got certification. We've got the SABS mark. We've got what we call system certification. We've got local content verification, as well as consignment inspection. Now you need to differentiate between systems and product. When you look at Coca-Cola, when you look at Valpre, all those particular products, they've got an SABS mark. What does it really mean? It means that entity has gone for an SABS mark. They've applied for the mark scheme. Hence, their products have got an SABS mark on them. Then you are an entity that is providing a service. Because you're providing a service, you're not going to apply for the SABS mark. You're going to apply for system certification. Does it really mean that if you are producing a product, you cannot apply for system certification? No, you can always apply for system certification. Hence, you've got companies such as Portia M producing skin lotions. body lotions and so forth. Yet, because there's no mark for body lotions, they had to apply for system certification. Then you've got testing, where we test products in line with the International Standards Organization. We follow the international protocols. We also provide calibration and proficiency schemes. In terms of our services, as I've said, we develop standards, we provide certification, and under certification, we've got the SABS mark, we've got system certification, we do consignment inspection. You would see with the police uniform, when you've been awarded a tender to supply police with uniform, they won't receive your products until they've gone through consignment inspection. That's where SABS will inspect the products against the specified requirements and verify if you meet the specified requirements. And if you don't, then you will have to go and rectify those particular challenges that have been identified. Then we also provide training on relevant standards that are accredited to various sectors. Then we also have local content verification. There are products that have been designated by DTIC to only be produced locally. Number one, police uniform, it has to be produced locally, 100% locally. Army uniform, it has to be produced 100% locally. Then you've got school uniform, it has to be produced 100% locally. You've got power pylons, 100% locally. And then you've got products such as your rolling stock. When we talk about rolling stock, you're talking about trains. There's a ratio there, which is about 85 and 15%. 85% of the components must be produced locally. 15% can be procured overseas to make sure that you put together this particular commodity. Same as with buses, it's the same approach. Then you've got foodstuffs. It's amazing that we produce a whole lot of maize. We're producing a whole lot of beans. Yet most of these commodities are packaged and are packed together in China, and they come as a full product. Hence, I spoke about beneficiation. It's about time we start beneficiating some of these commodities. And I'm glad that we've got SMMEs that have started producing sauces. We've got SMMEs that have started producing other commodities using local material, making sure that beneficiation is taken to another level. That's about local content verification. Laboratory services, we test various products as long as there is a standard for that particular product, or as long as there is the capability within SABS. Where we don't have the capability, we cannot be able to test. Or where we can subcontract, we subcontract those services to other sister labs where we can work together. Then you've got access to South African national standards, which is the internet, as well as the international standards, which is very, very critical. I know we've got Sipoga Zuhoza in the team from Kemin. She will let you know, or she will even tell you that many products from SMMEs, they fail. And the reason why they fail is purely because SMMEs don't have access to standards or don't even know about standards. You're producing a pine gel, for example. And because you're producing a pine gel, you are not even labeling it accordingly. You are not following the markings as stipulated by the standard, where the markings say you need to specify the name of the product. You need to specify the name of the entity that produced this particular product. You need to have the batch number. You need to have things such as the date of manufacturing, the expiry date, and statements such as pine gel contains ammonia or it doesn't contain ammonia. Statements such as it's abrasive or non-abrasive. Such things are very critical. It even becomes more critical when you're producing food products. They need to be labeled accordingly. And for you to label these products and these commodities accordingly, you need to have access to various standards. Now, the role of conformity assessment in South Africa. Let me look at the definition. The definition simply says, conformity assessment is any activity concerned with determining directly or indirectly that relevant requirements are fulfilled. For you to have the relevant requirements, you need to be developing a quality management system relevant to a particular given standard. You're producing bricks, you've got to adhere to South African National Standard 1215. You're producing paving bricks, you've got to adhere to the relevant standard, which is South African National Standard 1058. Now, once you've put together the control mechanisms, you've developed the quality management system, you are audited against that particular process. And in more tangible terms, conformity assessment refers to a variety of processes whereby goods and services are determined to meet voluntary or mandatory standards or specifications. Conformity assessment encompasses the following areas: testing, surveillance, in terms of surveillance audits, inspections, auditing, certification, registration, and accreditation. Unfortunately, SABS does not provide accreditation. SABS provides certification. It provides inspection, auditing, surveillance, and so forth, but not accreditation. Who provides accreditation? SANAS does provide accreditation on certification bodies. As SMMEs, when you want to be certified, don't come and say, we want to be accredited. You want to be certified against these particular standards. Who else provides accreditation? Your CETAs for training institutions, they provide accreditation. Now, I'm not going to get into depth on the role of conformity assessment in South Africa. But let me tell you just a few glimpses on what a conformity assessment does. It is very important to suppliers, consumers, and regulators. It enables producers to demonstrate that their products meet relevant design and safety standards. It gives consumers confidence when selecting products in the marketplace. Why have I put that slide in there? It's purely because many times we don't take care in what we are producing. Hence, you've got people, you've got kids that are killed by noodles. Why are they being killed by noodles? Those who have been producing noodles never took into consideration that there are standards and the environment in which you're producing those particular food products must comply with the relevant statutory and the regulatory requirements, which are the food regulation requirements, which stipulate that for you to run a successful entity that produces food, you must have the certificate of acceptability from the Department of Health. Once you've got the certificate of acceptability from the Department of Health, you then need to implement processes, food safety processes, such as HACCP, which is Hazard Analysis Critical Control Point, such as FSSC, if you want to export overseas, such as ISO 22000. This is about food safety. Then we've got the ways of how to develop standards. You come to us, you want to introduce a new standard. There must be some preliminary work that needs to be done to verify the need and the viability of that particular standard. Once that has been done, then a proposal is submitted. Having submitted that proposal, it will then be approved. If it is declined, you'll be told that your request has been declined. But if it is approved, then we prepare a committee. Once we have prepared a committee that is relevant to that particular commodity, once this committee comes together, the committee will put together the standard. Having put together that particular standard, they will then send that standard right throughout into the public domain for comments. And if all the comments come in and they are happy with the comments, or they even make some suggested changes into that standard will then be publicized. There are those SMMEs that I wouldn't advise to to come to us and develop a standard for their products, purely because their products are protected by the intellectual property or the IP. If your product is protected by the intellectual property, you don't have to apply for a standard for your product until your intellectual property cease to exist. Then we can really look at introducing a standard for your product. What is certification? Now we're talking about system certification. When we talk about system certification, it's a conformity assessment process whereby an independent neutral body confirms that a product or a service complies with relevant specifications or standards. You've got to be audited, and your audit starts with stage 1, where we verify truly indeed if there are processes in place. This is a bench study where we just verify your documentation. Then, if there are any deviations, you're given 90 days to clear those particular deviations. After 90 days, you are then audited, and that's stage 2. Stage 2 is more in-depth. If you are audited by one person under stage 1, under stage 2, you might be audited by 2 or 3 people, depending on the size of your entity. And they go through your processes with a fine comb. Once they've done that, they will then put together an audit pack if you have succeeded and they haven't identified any major non-conformances. They will then put together a pack. The pack will be submitted to an independent body, which is the approvals board. The approvals board will take a decision. If they are happy with your pack, they will then give you the go-ahead to be certified. I'm just going to rush, Sisi, so that I don't waste much time. What are the benefits of independent certification? It enables you to clearly state your objectives and identify new business opportunities, meet statutory and regulatory and customer requirements, customer retention, increase new business and new clients for the organization, access to new markets, increase productivity and efficiency monitoring, risk management and business continuity. These are the controls that you put in place, and that makes you be competitive in the marketplace. These are some of the key standards that we have: ISO 9001, ISO 14000, SANS 1812, which is about the reusable sanitary towels. And we are testing these commodities for free. If you're producing reusable sanitary towels, you can bring them in, we will test. Same as with disposable sanitary towels. Then we've got your occupational health and safety, ISO 45000. We've got HACCP, we've got ISO 22000. I think I'm just going to skip some of the slides, and I will share my presentation with the audience. This is about digital fitting. As you know, we are going through 4IR, and hence what Mrs. Happy was saying earlier on, to say SMMEs, you are now the custodians of job creation. And because you are custodians of job creation, you need to be aligned with 4IR, making sure that everything that you do is pretty much digital. Same as fitting your garments. Be able to fit your garments and looking at a doll that is 3G orientated, that will give you a feel of how a particular garment fits you and so forth. So I'll just skip the rest of the slides. As I've said, we've got quite a whole lot of slides. These are my contact details. Over to you, Sis. Sorry, Sis, you're on mute.
Yes, I was. So sorry about that. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you so much for your presentation. Much, much appreciated. I'm also pleased that you have indicated that you will make your presentation available for us to share with the audience, which is great, great news. Thank you so, so much. And thank you for that comprehensive, detailed, presentation you shared with us. That just seeks to remind, the businesses that are online now that this is what you need to know if you own a product, and you can't, there's no shortcuts to running to having a good, credible product and to running a productive business. And this is one, if you have a product, this is one area of your running your business that you can't do without. SABS is very important in that ecosystem, so to speak. And you made a very important example of the noodles. For example, if you do have a product that people are going to consume, best you make sure that no one's going to get sick after eating your the product that you're selling, things like that. And we're grateful for the information that you've shared with us. I do have one or two questions for you on the chat line. Shamith, I'm hoping I pronounce your name correctly, and is asking, where is Shamith's question? All right, technology is dealing with me. I had your question just now, Shamith. I will get it back. But
already responded to it as well.
Oh, yeah, you have. That's why it disappeared. Thank you. Okay.
Perhaps let me, sorry to just interject. Let me just give Shamith the sense of confidence.
Yes.
Shamith, because of time, I couldn't elaborate on local content verification. But when we talk about local content verification, we talk about 3-tier audit. We audit you as the end supplier, but we also go back to your 2nd tier and your 3rd tier suppliers to verify that truly indeed that commodity has been produced locally. If the 2nd and the 3rd tier cannot verify that truly the product has been produced locally, then that disqualifies you as a supplier. I hope I've responded to your question.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mngadi. I'm hoping that we are sorted with that. And there is something else, another question for you around, hi, I would like to know if you service uniform manufacturing companies and what is the process to apply. And this is from Mfanelo. I'm not too sure what it means when you say if you service uniform manufacturing, but Mr. Mngadi, maybe you want to take this one?
Yes. No, thank you very much. Mfanelo, there are standards that governs uniform, your PPEs, your school uniform, and so forth. And because there are those particular standards, we've got departments that are certifying these particular entities. But before you can even be certified, we then need to make sure that you've got fully developed quality management systems in place. And because you've got fully developed quality management systems, we can then be able to assist you in making sure that at the end of the day, you comply with those particular relevant standards. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I see on the chat box, somebody's asking, can I ask questions? Please, 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 we encourage that. This session is for you. It's about the interaction between a presenter and you as a delegate. This session is specifically for you. So asking question is the way forward. Please do not be shy. Send us questions on our Q&As, on our chat box, whether you're on Facebook or you are on the Zoom platform, with the greatest of pleasure, and we'll try and spot your questions and get answers for you. Just one more, Mr. Mngadi, we're keeping you very busy before we move on to the next speaker. I just want to verify that testing of reusable pads is free, and I think that's what you said. It is free. I had to get my pads tested twice and had to pay 20 Rand for each test, I think it is. I would like to know if there's any financial support for SMEs. Do you want to take that, Mr. Mngadi? But I do think that you did say it's free.
Yes, it is free. But one thing that is pretty much critical as a SMME, If you want to access some of the benefits, you need to contact me directly. Yes, you've paid 20,000, and it's such a painful process to test reusable sanitary towels. And the reason why it's such a painful process, it's purely because those products, they fail, and they fail a lot. And that's where you need to be trained by our training academy on the relevant standards and what is required. And the training is for free. You won't be charged anything. So just contact me directly. Don't go to the lab directly. If you do, by all means, they will take your money. You just need to come to me so that you can get those benefits.
Thank you so much. Contact SABS directly. Mr. Mgadi, do not go anywhere else. They will take your money. That is a warning. So please contact Mr. Mgadi from the SABS, and we will share his contact details when we do share his presentation later on after the session. Fantastic. So we're moving along with that. Thank you so much, Mr. Mgadi. Your contribution is invaluable, and it shows that, from the initial session we had at the Buy Local Summit, this is absolutely critical. I mean, we have a full house, more than 100 people on this session this morning. It goes without saying that this is a critical, conversation we're having for small businesses this morning. There's a bit of a change in our program. So the next speaker was going to be a presentation from the B-BBEE Commission. We are just dealing with a minor technical challenge. So we'll move on to the next speaker on the program, which is Lisbon Munyela. And Lisbon is from the corporate education unit of the CIPC, which is Companies and Intellectual Property Commission. Mr. Munyela, are you online? Welcome. Please take the platform. CIPC. Please go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yes, according to the program, I'm going to do the presentation about companies and the cooperatives. I'm not alone. I'm with my colleague, Gregory Kosa. He will touch on the IP. So I will share my screen so that we can proceed with the presentation. So yes, we have two types of companies in terms of Companies Act, which is a private company and not a non-profit company. So under the profit company, we have the private company, we have personal liabilities companies, we have state-owned companies. All those companies are registered with CIPC, and under the not-profit company is the one that is normally known as NPC, but is different from the NPO, which is registered by the Department of Social Development. I'll also touch on the annual return. So the technology just brings, okay. As I said, I will touch on the different platforms that one may use to register the private company. Also the annual returns. I'm not going to talk much about the cooperatives, but this presentation will be shared with the organizers, so everyone who need more information can go ahead and read through the presentation. And we are also available to be contacted for any information that one will need to ask CIPC. So as I said, my colleague Gregory will deal with part of intellectual property, and then I'm dealing with the part of business registrations and cooperatives. So here are the CIPC's objectives, which is registered in terms of Companies Act number 71 of 2008. So there are two platforms that one may use to register a company online, which is new e-services and BIS portals. So also for cooperatives, one may use the new e-services. One may also register the company at our services terminals, which we have one in Johannesburg and the other one in Pretoria, where you can walk in and register your business same day. In order to register a company or a cooperative, one need to reserve a name or to propose a name. So the system will give you 4 options that you may use to register your company name. So when you reserve a name, please make sure that you do not copy the name of other businesses or the other trademarks, so that they are going to challenge your company in the near future. So it's best to use your unique name for your company or for your cooperative. The new system for company registration, the website is www.bisportal.gov.za. It is important to mention that in this new system, there is no documentation required. The system is purely automated. The verification is done at the same time when you register the company. It is communicated with Home Affairs. Yes, it is communicated. It is linked with Home Affairs, and then immediately your details will be verified, and then you will get your company registrations. At the moment, only South African citizens may register on this portal. Other services that you may find on this portal are SARS services, UIF and compensation fund, the B-BBEE certificate. You may also register a domain name, which are the websites, and then you may also open a business account and then do the company name change as well as the business address change. I will just skip some slides so that I don't waste time. The new e-services system that was just introduced recently, you may also register the company. You may also register the types of cooperatives. On these new e-services, other services are also added in, such as the commencement of business rescues, and if you want to terminate the business rescue, you may do that on new e-services. So the new e-services, the link, you may find it on our homepage, www.cipc.co.za. The payment process of companies and private, the cooperatives on new e-services is a card or credit cards payment, debit or credit card payments. So we are no longer using the depositing money in your customer code. So you have to upload, to use your debit or credit cards in order to transact on new e-services. As I said, on the homepage of CIPC, that's where you may find the link for new e-services. So I've already explained that there is no supporting documents that are required to upload in order for you to register a company on new e-services or on this portal. As long as you are a South African citizen, our assist first, and the verification will be done immediately when you are registering your company. When you start to process or to register or to transact on our website, if you are not sure what you need to do, the best way is to visit our step-by-step guides are available on our homepage, and they will guide you on any transaction that you want to transact on our different platforms. I will jump to the last part, which is filing of annual returns. So it is very much important to note that each and every company registered with CIPC need to file its annual returns annually. The annual returns of CIPC are different from the tax returns of SARS. So our annual returns, a business need to file annual return whether you are operating or not, as long as you are intended to do business in future. So people are confusing our returns with tax returns, and then some they're saying if they're not operating or they're not doing any business, so meaning that they don't have to pay anything. So if your turnover is less than 1 million, from 0 to 1 million, so you need to file the annual return, and the fee will be 100 Rand. So you may file annual return on our homepage www.cipc.co.za, and it will direct you to the annual returns link. You may file annual returns at our CIPC service centers, and you may also file the annual return on this portal or the mobile app. And you may also use your debit or credit card to file the annual return, but you may still use the funds allocated to your customer code in order to process the filing of annual returns. So there's businesses which are not required in terms of Companies Act to submit the audited financial statement. They may use the option which is called Financial Accountability Supplement, or FAS. So this one is just a questionnaire which an entrepreneur will just fill their details. But for big companies which are required in terms of the Act to submit the audited financial statement, they will need to process using the XBRL. But for small businesses, they don't need to worry about this process. It's for the companies which are required to submit the financial statements which are audited, or their PI score is above 350. And then for more information about XBRL, you may send your query to xbrl@cipc.co.za. As I've already explained, a turnover of less than $1 million, the company will need to file the fee of 100 Rand. And if you don't pay that 100 Rand, there will be a penalty of 50 Rand, and then it will be 150 per annum. The companies and the closed corporations, the outstanding fee for annual return is the same if your company's turnover is less than $1 million. So for anything that our customers need to know, we do publish the notices on CIPC's website. So it's very much important for our businesses to visit the website, and also the new information about the cooperatives. We know that we are no longer accepting the manual applications, so our cooperatives members need to register their cooperatives on the new e-services, and the fee to register a cooperative is now the same as the fee to register the private company, which is 175 Rand. And then 50 Rand is for name reservation, and 125 is to register the company or the cooperatives. So that's the end of my presentation, and I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Gregory. I hope he's already on the platform to proceed with presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Gregory, you're welcome to proceed. There's quite a few questions for you for CIPC that I have on the chat line, but I'd rather we have Gregory proceed with the rest of the CIPC presentation, and then we'll take all the questions thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sisepi. I hope that my presentation is clear on your side.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Let me just scroll down because it's moreover we do the presentation with the company guys. There is my presentation, intellectual property. I'm going to discuss intellectual property. My name is Gregory Khoza. Intellectual property, in the shortest way or the easiest way that one can put today, is that is there anything that you as a business person has came up with, be it a process or a service or a product that is new to the industry, that is not known, that is not even easy to access, that you as a person or as a company have formulated. It could be an invention that will be known as a patent. It could be anything that is literally or artistic work, or anything that is manually written, that will be your copyright. It could be a design or an ornament or any graphics that will fall within the design space, and even the names, shapes, logos, or brandings that you as a company have come up with. It will be known as a trademark. And IP, it is the way, a legal way of protecting those particular processes, services, designs, or inventions as they come. We have 4 different types of IP as they are known to be IP domains. We have the patent, the copyright, the trademark, and the design. This helps the companies or the businesses to benefit financially. As Sisepi has said, the most important part of the business is to benefit or make money. So with the innovations or the distinctive from the other companies, that will be also protected. And in the first one that we'll discuss is a trademark. A trademark, it could be a symbol, a slogan, a name that is used to identify or distinguish your particular business or services from the others who are in the same space that you are in. Example, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola. I always make that simple example or analogy. Both of them are using a brand called Cola, and they are in the business of producing soft drinks. However, the distinctive between the two is from the name. The other one is Coca-Cola, the other one is Pepsi-Cola, and you cannot confuse the two. And also, if you look at the graphic, the other one is red and white, and the other one is blue and red, inclusive with the white. Trademarks enjoy a 10-year protection, which is renewable every 10 years. Meaning the subsistence of your trademark will take 10 years, and then the office will let you know that it's 10 years is due, you have to renew, that you have to do your renewal, and then it goes again for another 10 years. It is the only IP domain that can be owned perpetually until you don't renew it and it falls off. A design, it's a shape or a form or an appearance or a pattern. It could be in any type of ornamentation that you could put. You could find most in products or in articles. There are two types of designs that we have. It's a functional design and an aesthetic design. Aesthetic is just for pure beauty, nothing else. However, the functional one, for example, if I can make an example of a Coca-Cola bottle, if you see the Coca-Cola bottle or even the 500 milliliters, it's got grooves and the shape, it's usable for you to can hold, not to slip from your hands. So that design is protected, and it's more to do with the functionality of the bottle. Example, okay, a BMW, a Mercedes designs, if you can see, they are aerodynamic, mostly they help for the car to grip the road, and also for the air and the petrol consumption also. Those designs also are protected. And then we have a patent. A patent is a right that is granted to an inventor who has came up with an invention. That could be a product or a process that is providing in the trade. A patent enjoys a 20-year protection that is renewable every 3 years after registration. An invention can take different types of forms. It could be a process, it could be a new material, or it could be a machine. Either way, it should not be something that is obvious to the people who are in the trade. You shouldn't say to come up with something to say, how can I put an example? Something that if people are within that space of business would have said, if you come up with it, then they say, but that is obvious. If you mix 1, 2, and 3, this happens. It should be something that is unknown or that people didn't even think of. And then we have what we call a copyright. A copyright is an exclusive right that is given or protected to the creator of the work embodying intellectual content. That could be a literary work, musical work, artistic work. The work should be original and should be reduced into material form or recorded. In South Africa, we don't register copyright, with exception to only one copyright or type of copyright that we register. That is audio visuals, meaning movies or adverts or anything that has to be in audio visual. That is the only copyright that we protect. The other copyright enjoys what we call the automatic protection. What does that mean? After you have written a document or even your manual or anything that you have written down as your invention, and then at the end of the day or at the beginning of that document, you would claim Gregory Koza, and the copyright is reserved under this document, and the C in a circle and 2022. That claiming copyright on that particular document that you have written. However, the onus also is on you to prove that it is your copyright. As South Africa, we haven't as yet registered copyright, only audio visuals. So just to keep up, what is copyright? Books, painting, music, films, cinematographies, and all that. The only registerable copyright is cinematography, audio visuals. Patents, inventions, designs, appearance and shape, trademarks, names and logos and slogans, recognize and accepted them. So just not to go too far, this is the amounts that, or the value of what you can protect your trademark or your IPs with. A patent, which in most times you have to have a patent lawyer to register for you. However, if you are able to do so, and you have the knowledge to do so, patent application is 590. However, we always advise people to do the provisional patent application, which runs, which only is for 1 year, and you can only extend it for another 3 months. And then the trademark application, it costs 590. The design also 590. Film application, which falls within the copyright, it's 510. Ladies and gentlemen, as short as I was, thank you for everything. I will take questions from now. Thank you. I'll say it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khoza. So much information, so much to absorb and to process, but very critical. You know, I mean, some of the stuff that you've shared with us remind me of the well-known story that we all know in South Africans, the please call me situation, where there's still a back and forth fight, if you like, between you know, an individual and a company that he used to work for. You know, which then reminds us how important it is that when you come up with an idea, you know, which many people do, but how important it is that you protect your intellectual property, you know, and just don't share anything with anyone and hope for the best, because you know, things do disappear and ideas do get stolen, for a lack of a better word. And this, we find, and I'm hoping, you know, that I speak for many who are on the line, who are finding this, you know, discussion and so very important. I have a combination, a medley of questions for both of you, Gregory and Lisbon, and any of you can really take it, but it's directed at CIPC. I'll try and get like 2, because there's too many to try and deal with all at the same time. So somebody's asking that the name is, oh, okay. So Sandila wants to know if the recording of the session can be made available. Yes, with the greatest of pleasure. In fact, what we do as Proudly South African, we then post this on to YouTube afterwards, but it's also on Facebook, so we can share the recording with pleasure. Felicia says, I have applied for a trademark through lawyers and did that in 2021. So to confirm, after 10 years, I will have to reapply?
Just to answer that in short, it's not necessarily reapplication. However, the office will notify you of the extension of your trademark, and then you just have to fill in those forms that they will forward to you, and then everything will be done from the office. But if you don't do that, we take it that you don't use your trademark anymore. It's not as necessarily reapplication as it is now, because I didn't want to go into details. It's a very lengthy discussion if I have to go there. But definitely the office will let you know. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Neo Maruping says, thank you for the presentation. I deposited money just yesterday into my CIPC account. Now, what's going to happen with it since the system has now migrated into debit credit card direct payment?
Okay, thanks, Happy. And there's also a same question from Felicia. What I was explaining here, it is with the new e-services that is only using the card and the debit card payment. But other services, I mean, other platforms like our old CIPC website, our BIS portal, they still accept the funds in your customer code. And remember, we do have other transactions that one may use to transact with CIPC, like requesting the documents, like filing the annual returns. Those services you may use on other platforms and does not only require to use the debit and the credit card. So we are not migrating at the very same time. So we may still use your funds to do other transactions. But if you want to transact on new e-services, that's where you cannot use the funds in your customer code. So if I may proceed, I do have the questions. I don't know whether you will need to read them or you want.
No, please, you can choose any and go for it with pleasure.
Okay, let me answer those which are directed to me, because I went through your question and answer chat. So there is a question from Temba. You already answered that, but Temba, if you want some of our presentations on our website, we have the icon for webinars, so you may find the different presentations. But if you don't find one, you may send us an email to education@cipc.co.za. There is a question from Taylor. Taylor said they didn't get the tax clearance when they registered the company. Please note that we don't offer the tax clearance letter. What we do, our system is linked with SARS. What we do when you register the company, we give you the tax number, not the tax clearance letter. So if you need the tax clearance, now you need to go to SARS. Ritabile asked about the company that it was registered and then it has the long name and you want to shorten the name. So yes, it's possible to shorten the name, but it is quite expensive. Firstly, you will need to reserve the new name that you want to use. That reservation will cost you 75 Rand because you are not going to do it online. You have to do it manually. So because when you do it online, system will reject. So you do it manually, send an email. You can send us email to education and then we'll give you the full process. But in short, you reserve the name, it will cost you 75 Rand. And to change that company name from your company after the name is approved, it will cost you 250 Rand. So that process is going to be manual. There will be forms that you would need to download to process that process. But send us an email to education@cipc.co.za and then we'll provide you with more information. Especially also ask about the holding companies. So we don't hold the companies. You may use the share certificate to hold your companies. There is a question from Anonymous. Anonymous says you registered the company 2018 and now the annual returns is 3,000. That is not possible. If you calculate 150 from 2019 until today, it won't cost you 3,000. So possibilities that you did not register the company with us. So send the email to us and then we'll check how much, give us the registration number of the company. We'll check how much this company is owing. And then you need to register as a customer so that you will be able to get the correspondence from CIPC. There is a question from Cora. Cora asked about the NPO. We don't register the NPOs. NPOs are registered by the Department of Social Development. What we register is NPC, non-profit company. So non-profit company, you may register on our BIS portal and on our CIPC website, and the fee is 175 Rand, the same as private company. Mpo says from the past 2 years, the money is not reflecting. When you deposit money at our apps account, please use your customer code as a reference. The reason why your money is not reflecting is because you are not using your customer code as a reference. So you need to apply for reallocation of funds. The money is still in our account, but not in your CIPC account. Send us an email and then we'll give you the details on how to apply to allocate the funds. There is a question which I don't understand from Relin. is asking about voluntary VAT registration. That one I don't get it. What you mean? Please send an email. I will explain further. Yes, and the other one is from Neo. They will also concern from what I said that we use the debit and credit card. So I've already explained that one. Back to you, Happy.
Thank you so much. It goes without saying that we've kept you very busy, which is a good thing, because it means that the delegates, your presentations are well received, and they're dealing with issues that are important to them as they try to navigate doing business. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Please do not disappear if time permits. Failing which, we will make your presentations available to to our delegates who are online. And before we move on, just quickly, if Mr. Mgadi is still online, I neglected to to keep an eye on Facebook, and there is a question there from Nandi Pankosi for you. And Nandipa would like to know, she says, I manufacture natural hair products, and I would like to know what steps to take to get the products tested. You may have covered this, and maybe not.
Oh, sorry, Sison. She just needs to send me an email. And when she does, she must give me a list of products. And again, I just want to say to her, we cover a certain amount of the cost. There is a stakeholder that we work very closely with. They fund for 60,000, but you must have your tax clearance certificate as well as your company registration. So if your test requirements are beyond 60,000, the difference will be on your account. Thank you very much. But she must just send me the email.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mr. Mgadi. And Nandipa, there you go. There's your answer. Send an email. We will give you Mr. Mgadi's contact details so you can keep those natural hair products, sorted. So some of us can go into the retail stores and go purchase them. Buy local. Remember, to create jobs and to keep you in business and to keep the people that you're working with employed. Fantastic. Moving along with our program, and we will now hear from the B-BBEE Commission, and senior manager who takes care of education, advocacy, and awareness. Lindiwe Madonsela will take us through their presentation in a recorded format. And so I do encourage you online delegates to please listen in. B-BBEE Commission, here's another element of running a business that is critical for your business. Take a good listen and jot down your questions on the chat box or questions and answers box, and we'll tackle them. It's about 10 minutes or so. Please go for it. Technical. May we have the B-BBEE Commission's presentation.
There's things that we call BEE codes, and sometimes they will rule you not black enough, even if you think you're black. We need to understand these and get some education about how the BEE codes work and how they can have a positive impact on your business, but mostly on localization, because localization has become the trump word in government business. Government will support more those businesses that have more inputs that are local than us. You know what we do, Amos? We start a business, then we buy everything else from outside the country, and then we claim this is a local product. When the truth is, the only thing that's local is me, the proprietor. The rest of the input is foreign. Now, that's not going to work, and that is why Lindiwe Madonsela, Senior Manager, Education, Advocacy and Awareness at the B-BBEE Commission is here to help us understand that and hopefully help us to do business better. Sawubona, Lindiwe.
Sawubona, Ramsukunjani.
So the stage is all yours, but because I discriminate against people, I'm going to give you not 20 minutes, but 19.7 minutes.
Ooh, I'm not sure if it's fair discrimination.
You have your 20 minutes, my sister. It's all yours.
Okay, no. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining this session. I think my role today will be to present on the B-BBEE legislation, particularly linking it to what the summit currently is focusing on, the development of SMMEs, as well as the aspect pertaining to localization. So my presentation will then look at, this is the outline of the presentation, what is it that we're going to cover. So it's always important that when we talk about the B-BBEE legislation, we always emphasize what actually the legislation means, because you do come across a lot of narratives or a whole lot of theories which seeks to explain what the B-BBEE legislation is. And some of those theories do not particularly align to what the legislation has provided for. And we'll also look at how do we promote aspects around localization, particularly looking at the pillars that the B-BBEE legislation provides for. We'll also look at the challenges that currently are being faced, which is hindering aspects around localization, aspects around the promotion and the growing of Black businesses. Now, what is the B-BBEE legislation? Now, the legislation itself has defined what is B-BBEE. When we talk about B-BBEE, we are talking about economic empowerment of all Black people. And there are also instances where the legislation zooms into those groupings that were further marginalized, and that will cover women, will cover workers. That is why in certain pillars around B-BBEE, you will see aspect around employee share ownership programs. And the legislation also seeks to make sure that there's empowerment of Black youth, of Black people living with disabilities, people from rural and underdeveloped areas. Now, particularly, how does then the legislation seeks to increase or empower Black people? The legislation says the first thing that we need to focus on is that we need to make sure that we increase the number of Black people that own, manage, and control enterprises as well as the productive assets of the South African economy. Now, this becomes critical because then the legislation says we want to see the ownership patterns of the South African economy changing. We want to see the increase of Black people within the management structures of the various enterprises. And this could be attained through Black people coming into existing enterprises, or the support that is facilitated through the different pillars of the legislation that will eventually see Black people owning and managing their own enterprises. And then also the legislation, when it talks about management as well as ownership of the productive assets of the South African economy, it brings in the broad-based aspect. And that is the inclusion of communities of workers, as well as cooperatives and other collective schemes. That is why when you look at the pillars, particularly around ownership, you'll find that there is also focus around the inclusion of communities through broad-based ownership schemes or cooperative enterprises, or even the inclusion of workers through employee share ownership program. That is because the legislation seeks to ensure that we do create avenues to include broad-based participation. And the legislation also focuses on human resources and skills development, that sometimes you may come across Black people who are not necessarily entrepreneurs, but how does the legislation support them? It supports them through the aspect around human resource and skills development. And the key thing around B-BBEE is that because when you talk about Black people, you find different sub-races, you find African coloreds and Indians who are South African by descent or by birth, and who are also South African through naturalization, and that naturalization could have taken place on or after the 27th of April, 1994. The legislation then finds it very critical to promote aspects around equitable representation, that these sub-races that form the whole entire group of Black people must be equitably represented, particularly when we talk about aspect around skills development and also aspect around management control. And then also B-BBEE talks about preferential procurement from Black-owned and managed enterprises. That is why there's an element that looks at preferential procurement, and it has particularly provided a scorecard in terms of how we procure goods and services. And in doing so, bulk of the procurement spend is...
Sorry to just interrupt.
Yes.
We cannot, your slides are not moving. So I'm suspecting it's because they are not on slideshow. If you can
Okay.
just put them on slideshow, perhaps. Yeah.
Apologies. On my side is on slideshow, but I've not yet moved the slide. I'm on the slide
Oh,
that says
okay.
what is BBBE, yes.
All right. So we are on your holding slide, basically the very first one that says 15 March.
Is it? Can you see it now?
It's not moving still.
Is it not moving?
No.
Okay, because on my side it's moving.
Okay.
Apologies.
No, it's fine. You can proceed. I just thought maybe, yeah, you may proceed if you cannot change.
Okay. Can I stop sharing and share? If that will assist. Okay. So apologies for that. I was alerted that my slides are not moving. I hope they will move because on my side they are moving. Then also when you look at what is BBBE, making sure that there's investments that are channeled also to Black-owned and managed enterprises. And these investments could take the form of either financial support or non-financial support, which the ultimate objective is to make sure that there is capacity building for Black-owned and managed enterprises. Then also, when you look at these BBBE objectives, these BBBE objectives then are translated into the various pillars or the elements within the codes of good practice. And then these elements then seek to always address a particular aspect around Black economic empowerment. You've got the element that looks at empowering from the aspect of ownership. You've got the element that talks about empowerment from the aspect of management control. Then there's a pillar around skills development. There's also a pillar around enterprise and supply development, as well as socioeconomic development. The pillar around enterprise and supplier development looks at three things. It looks at preferential procurement, which is the normal or the standard procurement of goods and services. And it also looks at supplier development around the identification of Black-owned entities on the supply databases and capacitating them so that they can be able to take advantage of the various economic opportunities that are made available by those particular entities. And then also there's an aspect around enterprise development that looks at now the provision of support, also either taking the form of enterprise of financial support or non-financial support to Black-owned entities that are outside the supply chain of those particular entities. Now, the preferential procurement spend is divided into the various criteria. So there's always an indication of how much must be spent based on how compliant the entity is or based on the size of entity that it is. Now, the B legislation looks at entities from a point of view of the annual revenue that those entities generate. Now, based on the fact that you are either a small, medium, or large entity. Now, the preferential procurement scorecard says 80% of the procurement spend must be with entities that are, so meaning that if you procure goods and services from entities that are not BBBE compliant, you will not be able to recognize points come your BBBE verification. And even if you are able to get points because maybe you do have entities that are compliant, if bulk of your spend is with entities that are not compliant, it will eventually affect how as an entity you are going to recognize points. And the legislation says 15% must be with entities that are exempted micro enterprises. Exempted micro enterprises are entities that generate a revenue of between 0 and less than 10 million. And these entities, in terms of compliance, they can either present a BBBE certificate or they'll only present a sworn affidavit or a certificate issued by the companies and intellectual property systems when entities are doing their annual returns with CIPC, or they're registering new entities, they're able to get what we call a BBBE certificate, which is equivalent to a sworn affidavit. Again, 15% of the spend must be with entities that are within the category of qualifying small enterprises. And these are entities that are medium-sized. Their revenue is between 10 million as well as 50 million. Now, these entities will either present a BBBE certificate or a sworn affidavit. The sworn affidavit will be for that are at least 51% Black-owned because they automatically receive a level 2. and those that are 100% black owned will automatically receive a level 1, and they only have to depose to a SWAN affidavit. Then 50%, which is bulk of the procurement spend, must be with entities that are 51% black owned, and 12% of the procurement spend must be with entities that are at least 30% black women owned. Now, also when you look at the pillar around preferential procurement, it is critical that as part of localization, the preferential procurement then looks at what we call imports in two folds. Now, we understand that during the course of business, there are entities that either import goods or services. Now, the reasons for importing such goods and services varies. There are instances where entities procure imported goods or services because there's no local supplier. Now, the B legislation then also takes that into account, and it imports into two forms of categories. It says you've got group 1, which allows for continuing importation because there's no local manufacturer of those goods or services, or because there is further value adding that takes place within South Africa. Value adding can take place through the forms of packaging. It can take place through the form around distribution. So basically the legislation says if you are importing because of those reasons, then you can continue to import. Then there's a second category of imports wherein the legislation says you are importing not necessarily because there's no local manufacturer or someone that can locally provide those services. You are importing because of the brand specification or the technical specifications that are attached to those particular products or those particular services. And in this instance, the B legislation says this is an area where we can bring localization or where we can open up market access for black-owned entities. However, the legislation says this is not going to be automatic. It requires the entity that is importing those particular goods or services to develop what we call an import plan. And this import plan will then look at the identification of a black-owned local entity that can then begin to provide those particular services or goods. Now, the import substitution or replacement does not look at the entire component or the entire product that is being imported, but it considers aspect around the fact that you can look at certain inputs into that product or services that you can localize. Now, then the entity needs to have that plan, which will outline clear objectives of what that plan seeks to achieve. It will have clear interventions and key performance. And every time the entity is verified, then this plan also needs to be looked into to see that there is movement in terms of that particular plan, so that it does not become a plan that gathers dust, but it becomes a plan that eventually will see that there will be a black-owned entity that has been set up or established, and that entity is now able to manufacture some of the components that the entity used to import. And then also, when you look at this particular pillar, then moving into the aspect of supply development, it says as an entity on an annual basis, you need to identify 51% and 100% black-owned exempted micro-enterprises as well as qualifying small enterprises. And you need to spend 2% of net profit after tax to capacitate these entities. Now, this is an area where sometimes as the regulator, we pick up non-compliance. In the sense that, remember, it says you identify, you do a needs analysis, because the support that you provide must be able to address the gap that exists within that particular beneficiary entity. So sometimes you find that entities, they do not do the needs analysis. They want to prescribe to the beneficiary entities the form of support or what the support will actually do. And in certain instances, there are also no supply development agreements. You find that the support comes, it's just random. It is not strategic because it is not addressing a particular issue within the beneficiary entity. And at times, sometimes what the entities do, they will request the beneficiary entities to issue a letter acknowledging support prior to that support actually being identified. So the issue is, once sometimes you acknowledge the form of support, the entity is able to proceed and recognize points, and they are not obligated to then actually implement that support. And that is what we call an aspect around fronting. You cannot acknowledge support before that support is actually implemented. And you cannot then force the beneficiary entities to even provide that acknowledgement before you can actually implement the initiative. Now, when you talk about supplier development, we indicated that these are those black entities on your supplier database. Then they also have enterprise development. Enterprise development looks at entities outside your supplier database. It still has to be 51 and 100% blank owned entities or QSEs. This is a pillar that has been introduced to make sure that there's increased investment that is channeled towards entities or black owned entities. Now, also here, the legislation was amended in 2019 to recognize the fact that large entities, meaning entities that the revenue is 50 million and above, can continue to be beneficiaries of enterprise and supplier development. But there are certain requirements then that needs to be met. The first requirement is that when the support was first initiated, these entities needed to either be an EME or a QSE. And once then they've exceeded that threshold for EMEs and QSEs, you can continue to support them, but the support can only be for a maximum of 5 years, because then the legislation recognizes that these entities themselves need to be doing something around the aspect of enterprise and supply development. And also one thing that we need to understand is that the B legislation has got sector codes. There are certain sectors such as your ICT sector, your construction, your property, marketing, advertising, and communication, that when they determine their B measurement, they look at it within the context of the B-BBEE sector codes. Now, if you are within the sector that has a sector code, then your enterprise and supply development initiatives, they need to be sector specific. So if you're within the ICT space, when you identify beneficiaries for supply development or enterprise development, it needs to be those black-owned entities that are participating within that particular sector. Now, there are various ways in which the B legislation tries to make sure that it provides financial support or non-financial for aspects around localization or for the development of black-owned entities. Another pillar is the pillar around multinationals. There are multinationals in the legislation that, because they're not able to dilute their ownership structures, the legislation requires them to do something through form of investment. And that investment or that program, we refer to it as equity equivalent investment program. When they are approved to participate on that program, because they have to demonstrate that they cannot dilute ownership, and they have to demonstrate that they have a global policy that wherever they operate outside their home countries, they do not dilute shareholding. Then they will then receive approval to participate on the equity equivalent investment program. And part of the areas that they can focus into, wherein they can choose to channel 25% of the value of the South African operation or 4% of annual revenue from the South African operation, they can look at aspects around supply development. Now that gives an opportunity to increase form of funding for black-owned entities, because generally it's one of the challenges that we've identified, that black businesses will always indicate that there's limited access to affordable financing. So this pillar also provides that opportunity. And then also
2 minutes to go.
Okay, thank you. I will try to cover the remaining slides. Thank you, Rams. And the legislation also, through organs of state and public entities, does make available increased funding, because organs of state and public entities also have to implement the legislation. They also have to comply with aspects around enterprise and supply development. So also there, through the 0.2% of allocated budget, they can implement supply development initiatives. And also through the 0.1% around enterprise development of allocated budget, they can also implement enterprise development initiatives. Now, also the different types of enterprise and supply development, it could be paying for registration or licensing fees, providing IT-related infrastructure for black-owned entities, subsidizing their rental, providing them with trading equipment and tools, providing or supporting them through professional and consulting services, or even aspect around the provision of loans, whether it's loans with 0% interest or it's loans with reasonable interest. Those are the different types that enterprise and supply development can take. And also, there's also an element around socio-economic development, which requires 1% of net profit after tax to be spent annually to support Black people in rural and underdeveloped areas. And forms of support there could be development capital, grant contribution, which will then provide that opportunity for Black people within those rural and underdeveloped areas to participate in the mainstream economy and to be able to tap into those industries where you find that Black people are normally not. Some of the challenges that we identify, the station says the beneficiaries of enterprise.
Can I add that we deal with the challenges in the Q&A?
Okay.
I think
with our time is
mind. Yeah.
Right. So as you can see, we were way over time, but that was great information from the B-BBEE Commission that we needed to hear as businesses. But we do have that footage at our disposal, and we are very happy to share that content with you for you to have a look at with the greatest of pleasure. I'm hoping that we have questions. That was our last presentation for the day. We will take questions and questions rather. We'll have those questions answered, and then we will do our closing remarks. Great content from 3 entities that are critical in ensuring that they supply you with sufficient information for you to be able to run your businesses profitably, and that was obviously the CIPC and the B-BBEE Commission that we've just heard from now, and earlier on we did hear from the SABS. I do have on the line a colleague from the B-BBEE Commission who will take questions. It is not Ms. Lindiwe Madonsela, but it's a colleague of hers who is on standby. So you're most welcome to please, send those questions so we can deal with them. But I'm going to quickly have a quick look at what Lebogang Madumo says. I am overwhelmed by the B-BBEE presentation, I would imagine, and I hope, Lebogang, you're overwhelmed positively. I'm not too sure if you mean too much information to digest, or really information that is well received that you need to unpack and have an appreciation of. Please let us know what you mean. If you want us to deal with any aspect of what you've heard from Ms. Lindiwe, we are happy to do that. Anonymous says, I'm not able to see your presentation. Will you be able to share this with Proudly SA to forward to us, please? Yes, Anonymous will do that with the greatest of pleasure. We'll share Ms. Lindiwe's presentation from B-BBEE with you. Somebody else, another Anonymous, would like contact details. That seems to be a reasonable ask from many people on the line. Lindiwe Masango says her question was not answered. I guess the email was supposed to be for the question next to mine. I'm not too sure what that means. Lindiwe, I'll try and spot your initial question, and and try and see if we can answer that. Is our colleague from the B-BBEE here? Are you able to make a comment?
Hello everyone. Am I visible for everyone to see me?
Yes.
Hello.
Yes. Hello, Ritsidisizwe.
How are you and the colleagues?
Well, thanks, and you?
I'm good. So unfortunately, Ms. Matonsela could not be here with you today, but however, she sent me so that I could be of assistance to you in terms of the great topic that we have in today. So I'm Ritsidi Sidwe, commonly known as Tsidi to my clients from the Compliance Division of the B-BBEE Commission. So our job, as Ms. Matonsela has elaborated, it's within the B-BBEE regulatory space where we share information also with SMMEs, of which within our sector, they commonly known as EMEs and QSEs. Those are exempted micro enterprises and qualifying small enterprises. So our job is to ensure that there is compliance across board, and as you operate within your respective industries, you are aware of what the legislation seeks you to do and what opportunities are there for you as EMEs and QSEs. So to make it also simpler for the Proudly SA team, I would also just fix together a small presentation based on what Ms. Matonsela presented and send it to Nadia so that they can also share the PowerPoint presentation with everyone who's been here. So otherwise, I think that is all from my side, unless there's any questions that you would like to pass to me directly. Thank you.
Yes, there is. Thank you so much, CD. Firstly, just to say that thank you so much for, indicating that you will share with Proudly South African a presentation that speaks to what Ms. Madonsela spoke to us about, which is great, well received. Number two, there is, just to tackle one quick question, Vusi Dube is asking us if there won't be a presentation from SARS, and Vusi, the answer to that is yes, there won't be, not today. That was the plan, but regrettably that cannot happen today because we've run so beyond our allocated time, and in respect of everybody's time, I'm thinking that we may have to move that, but don't despair. What we will do in the next week or so, we will send out information to continue the discussion with SARS, with NEF, with the Consumer Goods Council, who will be, they'll be touching on issues such as barcoding for your product and all of that. So there's still a lot more in our basket that's coming up. So don't despair. We will be in touch, Vusi, and we'll give you all the information so you can hopefully log on again. Moving along for TD's, attention. TD, there's a question from Shamith, wanting to know, is anyone else having trouble accessing B-BBEE Commission website? Is your website functional, TD, as far as you know?
Yes, over the past weeks, we've experienced some sort of issues when it's pertaining to our network, but I'm not sure if that has been sorted because I was aware that they were busy fixing that yesterday. So if they could just drop us an email or continue to check later on today for more.
Okay, fantastic. Somebody's phone is ringing off the hook. May I please ask that person to mute? Thank you so much. And also, can I please have clarity on the current case about the triple PFA? Does it mean B-BBEE no longer exists, or will it be revised? This is from Anonymous, and I'm assuming that they're making reference to the court ruling that is currently pending, that is affecting around the triple FMA situation. Does that situation affect the B-BBEE work, for a lack of a better word, CD?
So far, there's internal discussions pertaining to that court ruling, of which we're taking into consideration. And one of the common grounds that have been identified was the fact that it doesn't really affect the BEE space as much, but there hasn't been a formal or official statement pertaining to our standpoint in terms of that issue. But I would appreciate that they send us an email so that we could be able to report to them in writing. But then I think, I don't know how long it'll take, but there should be an official statement on our website once it's up and running for everyone to familiarize themselves with.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, TD. One more question from Petunia, who wants to know, how does one access funding through the provision equity equivalent? How does one access funding through this provision if multinationals are looking into investing?
So the equity equivalent program, it's not facilitated by the B-BBEE Commission, it's facilitated by the BEE policy unit, which is a unit under the DTIC. So we do have contacts for the relevant officials within that specific unit for them to assist you in terms of the requirements when one wants to embark on that journey of equity equivalent. So they should feel free to drop us an email, and then we'll share their contacts. But then I still repeat, as the B Commission, we do not facilitate the program, but we do have information to share pertaining to the program itself. So the B Policy Unit, Mr. Jacob Maputa and his colleagues will be the correct people, as they are the ones facilitating the program under this SEZ unit.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, TD, for that. Vusi Dube, we note that you've our position in regards to taking the SARS discussion to the next session that we'll be facilitating soon is well received by you. Thank you so much, and I'm hoping everybody else who was hoping to hear from SARS is not too disappointed. We will do it. We have a responsibility to get SARS in the room. There is a request, I think, from Nazli Nelson, who is saying, could you please consider the compensation fund? I'm assuming, Nazli, that you are talking to Proudly South African for us to consider having the compensation fund in these discussions. And if I'm correct, yes, by all means, the more we have, the merrier. And especially those that are entities with programs that are so important to benefit SMMEs and small businesses. Fabulous. I don't see any other question. I mean, there's maybe one or two that we've missed. And I know that our speakers were actually also active online, answering some of the questions directly as and when they popped up. But it's been incredibly heartwarming to see many of you businesses and entrepreneurs and SMMEs online and interacting so much. You've kept us very busy, which is a good thing, because it means that you've had interest in the topics that were unpacked and shared with you, and it was interesting to you, and you stayed on for almost 2 hours. We don't take that for granted. Time is precious. You could have been anywhere this morning, but you chose to heed our call as Proudly South African, as we bring to you what we believe in the context of the work that we do as Proudly South African, that it's important to make this information available to you and play our part in trying to do the best we can for the betterment of our economy. Nazli Nelson says, yes, so I did understand your ask perfectly. So we will consider the compensation fund with pleasure. And you are asking, please, will you share your details so that we can communicate directly with you? Yes, I'll do that. Thank you so much. Fantastic. So everybody, we've come to the end of our discussion today. It goes without saying that this was important, because it is a like I said when I did my opening remarks, it's a domino effect. We are all interlinked one way or another, and it defeats the purpose if we work in silos. But if we collaborate and we do this type of thing, hopefully it makes a difference in somebody's business. And we are hoping you took as much as you possibly could out of this session today. Our thank you and gratitude to all our speakers. we heard this morning from Mr. Dumisani Mgadi, who is manager. If I may ask all the presenters to switch on their cameras, please, as we say goodbye. And Mr. Dumisani Mgadi, who is manager business development from the South African Bureau of Standards, SABS. Thank you so much for your time. We don't take you for granted, and thank you for being a friend of the Proudly South African campaign, where when we do call on you, you do show up. Ms. Lindiwe Madonsela, who was on video, Senior Manager, Education, Advocacy and Awareness from the B-BBEE Commission. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your contribution. And obviously, thank you to TD, who has had to step in, to take some of the comments and questions that the audience has. We appreciate your time, TD, and we look forward to that presentation. You promised us. We look forward to it so we can share it with our delegates that attended this morning. And then last but not least, thank you so much to our colleagues from CIPC, and we did hear from Mr. Gregory Koza and Mr. Lisbon Munyela representing CIPC. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Your contribution is invaluable, and we are going to be sharing. I mean, we kept you so busy. Yeah, there were questions coming for you, and you handled them very well. And we'll be sharing your contact details and presentations with. May we, by the way, there's Poppy Act realities. So may we share your email addresses at least with those delegates that would like to make contact with you. And thank you to all of you that attended this morning on the official platform, which is Zoom, and on our Overflow, which is the Facebook platform. And our parting shot, from me on behalf of Proudly South African, we thank you for your time. And Nasli, I do see your comment. Thank you for this, interesting session. Thank you for your, kind comment. And we will play out with a commercial 60 seconds, if you can just indulge us. It's called Game Time. It's Game Time in Mzansi, and it is our commercial from Proudly South African, where we are reminding South Africans about the importance of reigniting our own economy as a people, that it's half time, Mzansi, for us to go out there and claim our economy one way or another, as individuals, businesses, and as a people, as a collective, as South Africa. May we have Game Time on screen, please? And thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. Game Time.
The second half is about to begin. We need to change the scoreboard. It's time for all of us to pause and rethink the game plan in order to save the future. I call on all of us to be game changers, because greatness isn't reserved only for some people. By buying local, we're choosing to create jobs and sustain the ones we have. Time and time again, South Africans have taken destiny into their own hands, creating products that the rest of the world wanted to buy. See, the world remembers about us what we sometimes forget, but it's time for change. Let's all buy local. It's game time. Zanzi.
Local is lekker.
Your everyday decisions shape our future.
Let's all buy local. It's game time in Zanzi. Thank you, everybody. Have a great day further.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay.